Hi, everybody. We are so glad that you have chosen Grand Valley and that you've signed up for an advising and registration date. And we're delighted that you've joined us here today to learn more about that process. My name is Matt Balkans. I'm the Director of First Year Advising and Registration here at Grand Valley. And I'm also a professor of mathematics. It's been my good fortune to work at the university for 22 years, all of that as a professor in the math department. And I've served in this role with leading our advising and registration program for the past 7 years. In addition to my work as an employee at the university, I'm closely connected to the university as a Laker parent. My oldest son graduated in 2018. My middle child, Ethan, just graduated a week or so ago. And my daughter, Jenna, is part of the incoming first year class. So parents, I'm walking in this journey alongside all of you. And I'm excited to, again, share more about our collective work and what we've developed for this summer today. I'm joined by 4 of my fantastic colleagues from here at Grand Valley. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and then we'll get started as soon as those introductions are done.
Hi, I'm Brian Hansel. I'm a professor in the Movement Science Department. I'm also serving as the Assistant Director for Advising and Registration, and also lead faculty initiatives for student success. It's my 19th year here. I enjoy working with our students and helping them achieve their goals, and specifically working with our newest Lakers as they come to Grand Valley. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Good evening. I'm Jody Hitchinsky, Associate Vice President and Director of Admissions. I have been at the university for 23 years. This particular year has been like none other, and so the university and certainly the admissions office is prepared to continue to work with you over these next 3 months to help get you enrolled or your student enrolled in the fall. So we thank you. I certainly thank you for joining us this evening, and hopefully we'll answer some of your questions.
Hi, my name is Bonnie Ulmer. I'm one of the associate directors in the admissions office that works really closely with Matt and Brian on freshman orientation.
Hi everyone, my name is Liz Chase. I am the coordinator for parent and supporter orientation, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here with you this evening. Before we get started, I did want to go through a couple of housekeeping items. The first, I would like to note that I am recording the session this evening. This is going to be made available to everyone to view on our parent and supporter orientation website. I have put that website in the chat box for you to take a look at and access. Additionally, I'm sure that you noticed when you entered this Zoom session, your audio and video were muted. We do ask that you keep your audio muted if you are not speaking, just so that we can limit any background noise. But of course, you're more than welcome to unmute your video, which many of you have, and it's so good to see all of you this evening. Next, I'd like to draw your attention to the bottom of your screen where there is a toolbar. There you will see a chat button, which we will be utilizing later on in the session, a participants button, as well as a closed captioning button. Closed captioning is available to everybody this evening, so if you just click on that closed captioning button, that should be ready to go. And lastly, we do ask that everyone hold tight to their questions until we get to the Q&A portion of this session. So how tonight's going to run is Matt is going to go through a quick presentation about your students' advising and registration process. Then we're going to get to some of your submitted questions, and then we'll open it up to the group for any additional questions that you might have about your students' advising and registration process. So with all that being said, I'm going to hand it back over to Matt for his presentation.
Thank you, Liz. And before I start that, I just want to say to everybody that, as Jody noted, this has been a year unlike any other. And we acknowledge the unusual circumstances that we find ourselves meeting in, and we recognize that this is certainly not what we had all hoped for. We were looking forward to seeing you all on our fine campus in person this summer. I want to recognize that all of us have experienced both anxiety and loss in our lives. So students, I know that things have really changed for you radically in a very celebratory time in your own life. I'm sorry that you've had to miss those things. And I'm also sorry that the circumstances have led to this affecting your initial welcome to Grand Valley. Sorry, I was getting a bunch of feedback there, so I wanted to mute folks. I'll say that I've had the same feelings and experiences with my own family and with my own work and even with my students this past semester. So we recognize that these things are hard. In addition, we recognize that there's lots of unknowns about the future and that many of you asked questions in advance of our session today about what holds for fall. At this time, we don't have a lot of additional information we can add about fall other than to say that our president and the senior leadership team are planning for a face-to-face experience for students in the fall, and that more information about that will be forthcoming sometime around the third week of June, we expect. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to focus more on the near future and what you can experience for your advising and registration day, and then we'll wait for more information and things to follow from our university leadership. So with that said, I'm going to give a short presentation that has some PowerPoint slides. I'll share my screen with you. We'll talk about a few things there. Then we'll turn to some questions that were submitted in advance. And then as Liz noted, we'll get to open Q&A from you all as well. So here's a bit on what every student can expect in terms of our advising and registration program for this summer. So for our entire summer, not just May and June, but for July as well, and even the 2 dates we have in August, every student is going to have a one-on-one video conference appointment with an advisor for 60 to 90 minutes on their scheduled registration day. And so there's one caveat to that it's a little bit different for honor students, and I'll mention that in just a moment for how that ties into the scheduled registration day. I also do want to say that in our many past summers of work with students, when we do it in person, we have a small group of about 10 students that has one faculty and one professional advisor with it. And many students say to us at the end of the day, boy, I wish I could have had a one-on-one appointment. And so while in person is in many ways better, one advantage of our approach this summer is that every student does get a one-on-one appointment with an advisor. As I'm working with our incoming students and the information that we have about them, I'm working to assign students to an advisor as much as possible with experience or expertise in programs similar to what the student reported their interests were when they signed up for registration. And the big goal of these registration appointments is to get everybody registered for both fall semester and winter semester for the coming academic year. Some of you are already experiencing what happens before the appointment. It depends on when your registration date is, but if you are within 2 weeks of your assigned date, you'll receive an email from admissions that has network login credentials and a to-do list of items there. If you happen to be an honors college student, your experience is slightly different, and you'll be having some direct interaction with the honors college, scheduling an individual appointment as well, but likely not on the same date as the one you signed up for, because our honors college advisors are working with all honors college students. And to make that happen for the people we had involved, it takes a slightly different approach. When we get to 3 to 4 days prior to your appointment, each student will receive an email from their advisor with the day and time of the appointment, plus a fillable PDF form that you can share information about yourselves and send back to us. And then after that, the student returns that PDF, always at least 24 hours before the appointment. The advisor will respond with a video conference URL and some more information, including some suggested courses. Then when your appointment comes around, there will be a brief time for introductions and some back and forth about your questions, both about maybe placement issues or courses that have been suggested in advance. The majority of the meeting will be devoted to doing work together in Banner. So each student will share their screen, and then the advisor will help you walk through how our Banner registration system works and to use the draft schedule that the advisor has prepared in advance. Advisors will always work with students to answer questions and make sure they understand why certain courses are being taken, how certain courses are required for majors, how they fulfill general education, which ones are for exploration, and more. After the appointment, one of the nice things too about this approach is that you have a direct line of communication with your advisor by email, so you can follow up with them by email or by phone at a later time. We want everybody to know that the schedule that you develop on your registration day is changeable, and that holds it up till any time prior to the end of the first week of fall classes for fall semester. We do want all students to know that if you're going to make substantial changes, it's really important that you consult with an advisor about those, just to make sure that the adjustments that you make are appropriate. And then as we near fall semester, you can expect much more communication from the university. As I mentioned, we expect an announcement in late June with further information about plans for fall, which is again expected to be face-to-face. Major programs of study often reach out to students, and we have a transitions program that helps students further their orientation experience at Grand Valley. I want to share with you briefly some resources that are available to you so that you know what to expect in this process. So I'm going to go to just a different file here. And so students, if you're within 10 days of your registration appointment, you and your parents or supporters have gotten an email that looks like this, that has information about communication and logistics, that it has some things about prior course experience in Grand Valley placement, and also getting ready for your appointment with your advisor. If your appointment is more than 2 weeks out, and again, this is the protocol for non-honors students, so honors, you may have gotten some different communication than this. If your appointment is more than 2 weeks out, you've not yet received this, but you should look for it from admissions, again, 2 weeks prior to the day of your scheduled appointment. What we ask everybody to do is to view this as a checklist and to do some important work for us in advance. And so with this 2 week prior email, there's a reminder for how you can log into our university data systems and network. And so that was sent to you in print, but you also have access to it electronically. There's information that encourages you to then to log into Banner, and doing that before your appointment is crucial to make sure that you can get into the system. There's a number you can call if you have difficulty. In that 3 to 4 day window prior to your registration date, it's really crucial that you be responsive to email and respond to your advisor with this PDF information form. If you do get to a point where by 2 days prior to your appointment you haven't heard from an advisor, you should check your spam filter. And if you still don't find anything, please call the phone number that's in that email. And then we do ask that you have stable internet access and a computer or tablet for your registration appointment. If you don't have access to those things, please contact us and tell your advisor, and we'll work with you to find an alternative route. Just some additional key information for you to think about as your advising and registration appointment approaches. Sending us your transcripts if you've taken college credits at another university is a crucial thing. You'll get information about your math placement, and I'll show you a little bit more about that in just a moment, as well as information about language and writing placement. So let me just shift over to one other window here to show you what those links point to. So this is a central landing page on the admissions website, and there's information here about what you can do to send your college transcripts. If you click any of these links, you can learn more about how things like math placement work. So if you, for instance, click this link, which is also in the email to you, it puts you through to the math department's placement website. You can learn more about what your placement means, and you can learn about the online proficiency tests that you can take. I'm sure we'll have some questions about that we'll address some more particulars momentarily. In a similar way, you'll have the opportunity to look at writing course selection and language placement, all again from this website. And I think what we'll do is we'll save that because there are some questions that have been asked in advance that we'll come back to momentarily. But all of those are linked to from this particular email that you get. And then finally, as far as getting ready for your appointment with your advisor, there's some information here with a video on how to register using Banner. And so to watch that like 3-minute video in advance is a huge help. And there's some information here on our general education curriculum and our catalog and more. So setting some time aside, probably something on the order of an hour when you get this 2 week prior email to look through some things, to possibly take some proficiency tests and more, and then to get ready for that communication with your advisor is again a huge help to us. And so I would say the biggest thing that every student should do in advance is simply be responsive to these emails, right? You know, when you get an email that asks you to take action, and often the subject line will say action required, to set time aside to do those things and then to be in communication with us as asked. So if you follow those directions and respond promptly to your advisor with information and other requests, that will help us in all sorts of ways so that your registration will go smoothly. And so with that, that concludes my formal presentation. And so I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for the moment here. And then Liz is gonna share some questions that were asked by a lot of people in advance. And we'll respond to those first, and then we'll turn to particular questions in addition to those that you can ask to clarify or on other topics.
Great. Okay, so as Matt said, these are sort of some topics from the questions that you submitted prior to this session. I kind of went through and just pulled about 3 or 4 topics that I felt like encapsulated a majority of the questions asked. So the first topic is going to be around AP credits. or advanced placement credits. So lots of questions about what is the max number of AP credits that GVSU accepts. And then I know a number of your students may not have received their scores back from their AP exams or even taken their AP exams yet. And so just wondering how that impacts the advising and registration process.
Thanks, Liz. So AP is joined together with two other types of placement by exam. So there's advanced placement, there's CLEP, college level exam placement, and there's IB, International Baccalaureate. And in those three combined categories, any incoming student can bring up to 32 credits to count towards their Grand Valley degree. It's very rare that students have more than that from one of those three sources, but in the situations where they do, advisors work with students to help them understand which credits are most beneficial for them to count towards their degree. For AP itself, regardless of the fact that we happen to be working remotely this year and doing online appointments, the timing of things is the same as it is every year, where we know that you students are taking AP exams in May and that you don't get the results of those until sometime in late June or maybe even July. Our policy every year is that we have students assume that they got the score that they need on the exam to earn credit. Our data historically shows that about 80% of students who take AP placement, AP exams at Grand Valley go on to earn the credit that they need for those courses. And so we schedule under that assumption, and your advisor will help you do that. If we learn later that you didn't get the score that you need, we have a tracking system for following up with students, and we'll help you adjust your schedule as needed. I do want to also just affirm that while AP testing is being conducted in a slightly different way this year, that doesn't affect anything of how Grand Valley is accepting AP credits. So we'll accept those in the same ways that we have every other year.
Okay, great. The next topic is going to be about placement testing. So lots of questions about what are the placement tests that students need to complete prior to their advising and registration process, and sort of what does that look like or what does that entail?
Absolutely, thanks, Liz. I'm gonna go back to that website that I showed you earlier that is tied to the things that you're, tied to the links that are in the email that you get 10 days prior. And so there are three areas for every student to think about for placement before they have their registration appointment. For math placement, as I noted, if you follow through to this website, there's full information there about what your placement means. Your initial math placement is tied to your ACT or SAT score. There you'll also see that there are practice tests for the proficiency test, and you have the ability to take each proficiency test online. You can take it twice if you wish. And so basically there's 4 levels of math placement, the highest of which is math 122 and 123 fulfilled. If you have that placement, you don't need to do anything. And if you don't have that placement, you're encouraged to take the proficiency tests to see if you can raise your math placement. For language placement, if you're a student who has studied a foreign language in high school or in another setting before coming to Grand Valley, we strongly urge you to take a language placement evaluation in that language before your registration appointment. And if you click through to that, just like with the math department, you'll find information from the modern languages and classical languages departments about what's available. So you can learn for what degrees are foreign language classes required, the various languages that Grand Valley teaches. We have a large collection of those. You can learn more about what the language placement evaluation is like. But the big thing is that what we need you to do is, if you're going to take language placement, to, as soon as you get access to this, to go through and request a language placement evaluation. For 5 more common languages, those languages being Spanish, French, German, Italian, and Russian, there's a written placement exam that you take online. So when you click this, you share some information about yourself. You'll get an email that gives you a link that's valid one time for you to use to take an online exam. And that will lead to us getting information about what your placement is. If you are taking another language that is less common, something that might be like, say, Latin or Chinese or Japanese, other languages that we offer, the requesting an evaluation will initiate a process where a professor will reach out to you by email and set up a time to speak with you to learn more about your language experience and to help render a placement for you that we will then use in your advising appointment. And then lastly, there's one additional thing that we need every student to think about before their registration appointment, and that is your first year writing requirement. So all students are required at Grand Valley by the end of their first year to complete our first year writing course, which is Writing 150, but there are 3 options for how to achieve that. And there's lots of good information about this on this page from the writing department, but I will just go ahead and say that the main 3 things are, if you have taken AP or a dual enrollment class at another college that's gotten you credit for Writing 150, that's this last option down here for credit for Writing 150. You can choose to take Writing 150 itself, which is a 1-semester 4-credit class, or you can choose to take Writing 120 and Writing 130, which we call our stretch option, which rather than taking a single 4-credit class for 2 semesters, you take a single 4-credit class for 1 semester, you take 2 3-credit classes in consecutive semesters. So Writing 120 and 130 are for students who have less writing experience, would appreciate having more support, and a slightly smaller class size. So that's something that there's lots of information about on this page, a short survey that you can take for yourself, and that's completely your decision. We don't decide your writing placement for you. We provide resources for you, and advisors help you make that decision. So that's the big overview of the 3 things regarding placement that we'd like everyone to think about before their registration appointment.
Okay, great. So this next topic is going to be about the first year learning community, or the connected courses. So questions about what credits these courses count towards. Are they gen eds? And should students choose the connected courses that they want prior to their advising and registration appointment?
All right, yes, thanks for that question. The First Year Learning Community is a program where we take courses that already exist around the university, and we recruit faculty members to take a section each of their courses and combine them together under a unified theme. So they connect their content in a unique way. Students earn the same credit that they would if they took a standalone course, but some of the benefits of the First Year Learning Community are that students are in both of the courses with the same groups of students. So it brings the university down a little bit as far as size goes. We know that the relationships amongst the students are more powerful, are closer really through that experience, as well as that gives the faculty an opportunity to get to know the students a little bit more and to engage with the students in even more deliberate and more intentional ways within the curriculum. So the student will leave at the end of the semester with the same credit they would have gotten either for general education or for their major, taking it through the learning community, or if the same as if they would have taken it standalone, but they get the added benefits of taking the paired or the connected courses. The question, Liz, relative to general education, each of the pairings is designed such that it will take care of 2 portions of the general education curriculum. So that way, when you look at it, not only are you getting this unique theme and way to approach that content, you get to know and understand and get to know and build relationships with the faculty and the students, but you also get the same credit you would otherwise. And then as far as should you choose one of these options prior to your advising registration date, my advice is yes, absolutely. We've gone ahead and processed the first requests from students for this opportunity. And what the benefit of being able to select this ahead of time is you're pre-registered into both of these courses before your session even starts. So that way your advisor is aware of those and they can easily build your schedule around those courses. So that way there's no conflicts.
Great, thank you, Brian. Okay, our last question is going to be, can parents and supporters attend their students' advising and registration appointment?
Sure, thanks, Liz. We get asked that same question when we meet in person. When our work is done in person, we run 2 parallel programs. We have one for parents and supporters, and we have one for the students themselves, and we normally work with students in a separate environment. We understand that circumstances are different this year. The program for parents and supporters is an asynchronous one. There's a wonderful collection of videos for families to be able to watch and learn more about the kinds of things that we would do in person. And so when it comes to the advising and registration appointment, I'll say that while our preference is that advisors work one-on-one with students, we understand the desire of a family member or a supporter to be present. And so we're willing to have that happen, provided that the person involved is a listening partner and is really there just to support and be on the side. It's very important that the student themselves drive the conversation, that they share what their preferences and needs are, and work with the advisor directly to respond that way. I do want to again assure all parents and supporters of our incoming students that the work that we do in the registration appointments is not something that's set in stone. So if after the registration appointment finishes, you feel like something's not right, or a day or two later, you feel like you've changed your mind about things or have questions, that certainly is something that you can reach out to us about, and we'll absolutely work with you to make everything right and better so that you're comfortable with it. That's work that we do, whether we're in person or we're working remotely like we are here. And so we're happy to do that again this year. Thanks.
Okay, that is going to end our submitted question portion. So now we are just going to open it up to all of you for any additional questions for the good of the group about your students' advising and registration process. There are a couple ways you can ask questions. You can either type in that chat box and just make sure that when you do type, there's a drop-down menu and that you're typing to everyone so we can all see the question. Or there is a raise hand option, so you could hit the raise hand and I can call on you and you can unmute your audio. So either way, however you prefer. It looks like we've already received a few questions, so I'm going to kind of just jump on in. Okay, first one is about honor students and their learning communities. Are honor students in their own learning communities?
Yes, in a way they are. So in the honors college curriculum, every incoming first-year student takes what we call their first-year sequence. And so students in the honors college have received communication from honors advisors and staff about the importance of choosing that sequence. And what that consists of is, much like the connected course, themed courses on a particular topic, and they take 2 courses on that in the fall and 2 courses in the winter. So there's a wide range of choices that students have there. A couple that I know of are, one is called Food for Thought, and it's about food in the world around us and studied from a wide range of different disciplines and perspectives, team taught by a couple of different faculty members. Another one is, I think, called Water in Our World, and it's tied to water issues and more. And again, there's lots of choices there. And so the honors curriculum was actually the model which led us to develop the connected courses that Brian was talking about that are available for non-honors students to take some kind of interdisciplinary courses that often stand alone but now can be connected together for students to experience. And then one of the advantages in both of those settings for honors or non-honors is that the group of students in those connected courses is the same. So the honors students have 2 classes typically that meet back to back with the same group of students in them but different professors, and a similar thing holds for the connected courses.
Okay, great. Another question is, if a student has done a lot of research on their classes, can they register for some classes ahead of time, or should they enter a plan?
Sure, if you're that familiar with Banner, it's great to look at those things ahead. What I would encourage you to do is to just communicate your wishes to your advisor. So when you respond back with that fillable PDF information form, to simply write either in the PDF form or write in the text of your email, say, these are courses that I'm pretty sure I want to take next year. Could you please incorporate those in our plan? And so I think it'll be more advantageous for you to just share those desires with your advisor at first, rather than actually trying to register. And you won't be able to register really until right about the time of your appointment in terms of how our Banner system works.
Okay, I have a question about taking summer courses. So if I want to take a general ed course at a different college for summer session, should I have those already scheduled before my registration session?
No, not necessarily, but I think you want to have a good idea of what those are, or tell your advisor that you're thinking about that so that they can plan with you accordingly. Anytime you've taken a class anywhere, whether through AP or dual enrollment or otherwise for college credit, you want your advisor to know about that so that we don't also schedule you to take that class with us, right? And then we can also deal with prerequisites and other things that are necessary to continue you moving along your path.
Okay. I have a specific question about SAT. With postponements, our student was scheduled to take the SAT 3 additional times this spring. Each test date was canceled. The next test date is not until August. Will you honor scores from that test for academic scholarships?
So in response to that question, if a student was admitted to the university by December 31, then we allowed students to send updated academic credentials, could be an updated high school transcript or a test score, until May 1, which is college decision day, in order for us to consider them for merit scholarships. When it became apparent that the March test was going to be canceled due to the pandemic, we immediately went into action and we moved our due date from May 1 until August. And our thought process was, if the spring sessions are canceled, then perhaps a student will be able to take a test in the summer. When the testing agencies canceled any summer tests, then that did eliminate the ability to send updated scores. And we do award all of our merit scholarships prior to enrollment. So once we get to that date and enrollment has started for the fall semester, we will no longer accept academic credentials for merit scholarship consideration. However, in this situation, it is important to note that not everything is merit-based. So our merit scholarships, we post the specific criteria to earn those. We also understand that family circumstances have shifted significantly in some instances during this time. And so if you are in a situation where maybe because of job loss or layoff or whatever it could be, our financial aid office is ready to talk to families who feel that their circumstances have changed. You can handle it one of two ways. They do have a special circumstance form where you can document the information you would like considered, anything new since the time you filed the free application for federal student aid, or you simply can contact the financial aid office and have a conversation about what opportunities are available. So again, if you're in a situation where you would like to have another review of your total award package, that would be the way to approach it. Thank you.
When should students start using their GVSU email address?
So your email address is available for you to use at any time. We continue to use your personal email address and your family supporter email address for all of our communication up until the time you're enrolled. So it's really important that if you're using them interchangeably, that you're making sure you're watching both, because until you're enrolled, we're using your personal email address. And then Dr. Balkans, perhaps you can talk about what the advisors are expecting.
Right. So for the email that goes out 3 to 4 days before your registration appointment, that email is being sent to students' personal email address that was submitted as part of their application. And then as well, parents and supporters are being copied on that. And then once the student writes back, the follow-up message will go directly to the student, to that personal student email. So if you want to use your Grand Valley address, that would just be something you'd want to make sure that you loop in on your response to your advisor, because I would imagine once you respond, then they'll be corresponding from there. But I would urge you to make sure you keep checking that personal email address that you've given to us to make sure you don't miss any correspondence.
Matt, can you just quickly go through the process for student athletes? Are they going to be, who will they be meeting with, and anything in particular that they should know about their registration process?
Sure. So for all student athletes, one of the things that we do is when we ask for all students, when we ask for your information in that fillable PDF form, we ask, are you going to be a varsity athlete on campus? And if yes, then your advisor is aware of that. And with that, we work to schedule classes around your practice requirements. This year, in the circumstances that we find ourselves in, there are a lot of changes in NCAA athletics. And so we're doing the very best that we can to connect incoming varsity athletes with advisors from our Laker Academic Success Center. So many incoming varsity athletes will find themselves scheduled with one of our 3 advisors from that department in athletics. So that's Damon Arnold, Maisha Golston, and Michaela Meyer. But for incoming varsity athletes who aren't scheduled with one of those folks, by telling your advisor That opens up channels of communication where your advisor will work with me and will connect you to an advisor in the Laker Success Center for additional follow-up afterwards.
Okay, I have a question about if a student is taking the AP exam, do they still need to take the placement tests?
That depends which placement tests they're talking about. So I will say if you're taking the AP Calculus exam, you don't need to take any math placement at all. Even if you happen not to get the score that you need for credit at Grand Valley, we adjust your math placement based on having taken AP Calculus. If you're taking the AP English exam, you should tell your advisor, and you don't need to do anything else for writing 150 because passing that exam will fulfill writing 150. And if you're taking AP language, that's the one place it's a little bit of a gray area. You might still benefit from doing a language placement evaluation just to make sure that between your AP and the language placement evaluation, you get the optimal placement for yourself.
What dorm buildings are the honor students able to register for?
There are two housing communities on campus that are for honor students. One is in the Holton Hooker Learning Center, which is, I believe, our newest housing center on campus. And that is a more traditional style with 2 students to a room that has community bathrooms. And then we also have Niemeyer, which is where the Honors College itself is housed. And that's suite style living where there are 2-person and 4-person suites that have 1 bathroom for every 2 students, and students have a private bedroom. So I'll say as a parent, my oldest son, when he came to Grand Valley, was in the Honors College. He lived in Niemeyer right away his first year. Our second son, Ethan, he lived in Holton Hooker his first year and then moved to Niemeyer his second. And our daughter is planning to live in Niemeyer. Both of them are beautiful facilities with wonderful options for students. And I think I basically recommend those based on what you think you prefer. Do you prefer a suite style that's a little more private and on your own with also some upper class students living nearby, or do you prefer to live on a floor of other students that are all first years, which is what HHLC, the Holton Hooker Learning Center, offers?
Okay, I have a question about if classes are going to be in person in the fall, will there also be an in-person orientation at some point?
That's a great question. And so our orientation always happens in several phases. So the first phase is what you're experiencing this summer, our advising and registration portion. Our transitions program in August is step 2 of that process. And then really your fall classes and meeting with professors and advisors is the place where your full-scale orientation to Grand Valley comes. So with our plan for face-to-face classes in the fall semester, in the week prior to classes starting, around the time that move-in will occur, there will be a program for students that will take into account the fact that we weren't able to meet with you face-to-face this summer. But that's something that we're all still working on, so we don't yet know the details of what that is.
Is language a requirement if the student is pursuing a BS degree?
I believe the answer to that is a universal no, but there are sometimes exceptions. We have a couple of 100 programs at Grand Valley. The most common reason that a language is required is to do a Bachelor of Arts, whereas most Bachelor of Science don't require that. But I would ask you to just check with your advisor just to be absolutely sure.
Do you have to take math and writing placement, and when do they need to be completed by?
So there's no writing placement to take. There's some writing thinking that you need to do in advance, right? So what every incoming student needs to do is they need to decide, do I want to take 1 semester of writing 150, which is 4 credits and a very demanding course in a class that you need a C or better in to fulfill the university requirement? Or once you learn more about what that class is like, do you want to study in an environment that offers a little more support, that stretches the work out over a longer period of time over 2 semesters and take writing 120 and 130? So if you don't have credit for writing 150 coming in, every student needs to think about that in advance. And then your advisor will help you with that. We even have writing consultants who we can connect you to if you're struggling to make that decision. But there's no placement test to take for writing. For math, the answer is that it depends. And I would just say that if you have particular questions about whether you should take math placement or not, one of the things you could do is you could reach out to Liz after this meeting, or you could reach out to admissions. She can connect you with me if the information on our website about math placement is unclear to you.
There's an interesting question about if a student is a student athlete, is it possible time-wise to successfully pair the honors college and athletics?
Yes, absolutely. So our student athletes have a lot demanded of them, but many students in the honors college have lots of things demanded of them as well. And so I'm a big believer. I've worked at the university for 22 years. I'll say to everybody here, the best work that I see from students on average comes from students who are busy, who are taking lots of classes, have a full calendar for themselves, and do their work accordingly. So I've worked with varsity athletes in the past that have been in the honors college students that have had multiple majors and major extracurricular activities. So those are all things that any student who wants to can do, and should talk to their advisor about their various constraints and what their goals are.
We have gotten a few questions about possible deferment in the event a student chooses not to attend in the fall.
So at Grand Valley, when you apply to the university, you're applying to be admitted for a specific semester of entrance. So if you decide not to attend in the fall, but would like to attend in the winter, then it would be really important for you to contact admissions, and we will work with you to make that change. If you decide to wait a year, that's a difficult decision to make, but if that's what works best for you, then you will need to reapply for that particular academic year. So for that fall, you'll need to reapply. I would encourage anyone, if you're thinking between these different options, to talk to someone in admissions. For example, if you do have a merit scholarship, if you attend another institution prior to enrolling at Grand Valley, then that merit scholarship money is no longer available. You'll recall that Grand Valley has to be the first institution you attend after high school graduation. Now that's a little bit different than the question we had a moment ago. If you're a non-degree student this summer, just picking up a class or two prior to enrolling to Grand Valley in the fall, that's fine. But if you choose not to enroll at Grand Valley this fall, enter another institution, and then transfer to Grand Valley, then at that point you will no longer be considered for that merit scholarship money. If you decide to wait a year, let's say that you take a year off of pursuing your education. And I encourage you to strongly think about that before you do that, because you know, we know how important education is, and you have to think, what are you going to do during that year if you're not going to school? So if that's the decision that works for you, then for that academic year, we will consider you for the merit scholarship program that we have available for that year. So your scholarships don't necessarily just transfer over. In many instances, we don't make a lot of changes to the merit scholarship program, but I think it's worth noting just so that you look at the detail and that nothing catches you by surprise.
I have a question about first-year learning communities. Are the 6 course pairings online the only options available for that style of learning?
Within this program, yes, that's the only, those are the choices that exist for this year. Yeah, that's it right there on that site. And you can find that on the admitted students checklist to find the website about the first year learning community, those choices. And if you have further questions, feel free to follow up with me.
There have been a number of questions in this chat about when students will hear about housing assignments. Those should come out. They're going to start, housing will start, going through those assignments in June. And I believe mid-June is when students should start hearing about those assignments. Sorry, just still going through some of these questions. I know there are a lot of questions about the fall. Our president is holding a virtual town hall this Wednesday. I would highly encourage all of you to attend that. That is where she will be chatting with you about what the future looks like at Grand Valley. So I'm going to go ahead and put the link to register for that town hall in this chat box.
I'm going to take the opportunity just to share a couple other points that I'd like you to consider. First of all, you must have a final high school transcript sent to Grand Valley. So that means when your date of graduation is posted on your transcript, then you will have the school send that to us. So we must have a final transcript on file for every student. So for many of you, that may mean logging into Parchman or whatever electronic system that your school has available for you to do that. Just make sure that you're requesting the final transcript. We talked a bit before about AP or IB. Remember, if you completed an AP exam your sophomore or junior year, you may recall students or family supporters that you could only list one institution to send that score to. So at that point, it may not have been Grand Valley. So if you have any prior AP credit earned, you're going to need to contact College Board and have that sent to us so we can also add that to your student record. And then for any of you that completed credits through dual enrollment or an early middle college program, you must have that college transcript sent to the university. So we are not able to access any of that information on your behalf. We need you to contact that institution. And again, most of this is done electronically, so there shouldn't be any delay. Have that sent to us so we can have all of those credits evaluated prior to your advising and registration session. Now, if you're caught by surprise and you haven't had that done and you have an appointment yet this week, then what you should do is access anything unofficial that you have and make sure that you're providing that to your advisor, because what they're going to do is build your schedule around any credit that transfers in. So make sure you have that information available to you.
I would like to also take the moment to just let all of you know that we are going to be offering a variety of Q&A sessions throughout the summer with a variety of offices such as housing, dining, advising, and career, as well as some Q&As about safety and wellness. And those can all be found on our parent and supporter orientation website, which I will again put in this chat box. That's going to be the best time to get answers to some of these, definitely some of these housing questions, which I know is on everyone's mind, which is completely understandable. So I'm going to put this link in here. And like I said, those are going to be offered throughout the summer. So you should have lots of opportunities to directly ask these offices those questions.
I see a question related to work study or a job on campus. What you can do if you're interested in working on campus, and you don't have to have work study funds offered through your financial aid award letter. We employ thousands of students on our campus and count on student employees. So if that's something you're interested in, you will notice that we have a platform called Handshake. That's where you'll go. It's an online system that you can go and begin looking for employment opportunities at the university, and you can start doing that at any time. I see another question related to if your student chooses to attend a community college in the fall, would they then be considered a transfer student? And the answer to that question is yes. Once your student attends another institution in the fall, whether you decide to transfer in the winter or wait a year, at that point, then we consider you a transfer student, and that's the route that we take to having you enroll, and any of scholarship, any information changes relative to your status as a transfer student at that point.
Any other questions about the advising registration process? Again, this video of this Q&A tonight will be posted on the Parent and Supporter Orientation website, so definitely check that out if you'd like to go back and rewatch or listen to this session again. Okay, a couple more questions coming in. If classes are online, can students, I know lots of housing questions again, I'm going to just sort of refer you to some of those Q&As. We actually have a Q&A with housing this Thursday. It is at noon again. So if you want to check out our parent and supporter orientation website, you can register for that session, and they're going to have a lot more information about sort of their plans for the fall. The first semester payment is due August 21st at 5 p.m. That was another question.
That's a good point to just add to. So there's no tuition due until 10 days before classes start. It's the process of registration is the way that you show to us your intent that you're planning to come to Grand Valley. We understand, again, that there's a lot of things up in the air right now and that may make people hesitant, but there's no disadvantage to you at this point. In fact, only advantages to registering for classes. And so we really urge you to do that, to sign up if you're not yet signed up, and if you are signed up, to carry through with that appointment and do the things that attend to that.
And before we sign off, I just want to reiterate one last time that a lot of individual decisions, a lot of individual questions that many of you may have, and the admissions office is available to talk through those with you. If we don't know the answer to your questions, we will talk to our colleagues around campus and find that information. So our phones are open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, but if you need an evening appointment or would like to meet with someone on the weekend, we are happy to accommodate your schedule. So just reach out to the admissions office. You can email us at admissions@gvsu.edu. So any information, anything that would be of value to you as you're making this important next step, we're happy to walk alongside you and provide any of that detail. So please don't hesitate to contact us. We're all working and we're all available and ready to assist you through the process.
Liz, are there any more questions, or would you like me to wrap things up?
I'm not seeing any more questions, so I think we're,
okay.
Oh, looks like maybe, yep. Looks like that might be it. We did put the admissions office phone number in there and email address. Again, please contact us with sort of specific questions. We can connect you to those offices that will definitely have more information about their plans for the fall.
So I would just like to say just a few remarks in closing. So first off, again, I want to thank all of you for joining us here today, for choosing Grand Valley as a place to go to school, and for trusting us with your education. Grand Valley is a great place. So I've been really fortunate to work here. One of the things I've observed over my many years here is how dedicated our faculty and staff are to our students. How people always go above and beyond the work that's required of them to do what's best for students. And I've seen that in ways like no other in these past 6 weeks. So a lot has been asked of us, and people have worked incredibly hard, not only to serve our serve our current students, but also our newest and incoming students. So the services that Jody has mentioned about our admissions office offering, I hope that you all will take advantage of that. If you have additional questions, they direct things to me related to advising and registration, and we connect folks to those who are in the know on campus. I also want to say that President Mantella and her senior leadership team, they meet every single day since this crisis began for at least an hour starting at 9 a.m. They're thinking of a wide range of contingencies and planning and work to having things in place so that students can be safe and have the best possible experience when the fall semester starts. So I know that it's hard to wait for that information, but we expect that more of it will be available in June. And then just on a closing point, I would say one of the great privileges of my life has been watching students mature and grow at Grand Valley. And I've seen student after student after student really have a great experience with us. And I've been really privileged to have that for two of my own children. My son Ethan, who just graduated a week ago, had just a fantastic experience at the university. And so what I hope for all of you is that despite these weird circumstances we find themselves in, that things settle down, you come to Grand Valley, you find it to be a superb home, and that you have a similar experience like so many students before you. Thanks again for your time tonight, and we look forward to more communication with you.